Could it be that doing less is the secret to receiving more? We've been taught to work harder, try harder, want harder, but what if the very act of trying is what keeps it away? Neville Goddard said, "Be still and know that you are. Not you will be, not you could be, but you are." Now, this video is not just about learning, it's about remembering. There's a moment, one you may experience today, where the mind goes quiet. The desire is no longer out there, and something deep within you whispers, "It's already done." That moment, that's the shift. And once it happens, your world cannot remain the same. You didn't come here for more techniques. You came to release the lie that you need to chase, prove, or strive to become what you already are. So today, we're not adding more noise. We're subtracting everything that gets in the way of your inner knowing. This is not about apathy. It's about divine stillness. Stillness is not weakness. It's the womb of creation. By the end of this journey, you'll understand how to sit in that womb, feel the birth of your fulfilled desire, and walk through your day with a quiet confidence that bends reality in your favor without lifting a finger. Let this be your turning point, because when you stop striving, reality starts shifting. So for now, let go of the to-do list. Set down the mental checklist of what needs to happen, and just listen. You're not here to force life. You're here to remember you're the one imagining it. Let's begin. Let it happen. Don't make it happen. There is a subtle tension in the air whenever you try to make something happen. You may not even notice it. It shows up as planning, calculating, adjusting, trying to manipulate events, people, even your own feelings. You say you're manifesting, but beneath the surface there's still that voice whispering, "What if it doesn't work?" But Neville Goddard taught something far more radical and liberating. He taught that creation is finished, that you do not need to bring your desire into being because it already exists in a dimension you cannot yet see. So why does it feel so far away? Because you're trying to pull it into existence through effort, mental, emotional, and sometimes even physical effort. But creation doesn't respond to effort. It responds to assumption. And assumption is quiet. It's still. It doesn't grasp. It knows. There's a reason why so many manifestations arrive the moment you stop trying. The relationship appears when you're no longer obsessing over love. The job comes through when you've finally surrendered your worry. The money shows up when you're not counting every coin. Why? Because trying is the language of lack, and life listens to the tone, not the words. Let's look at this through a metaphor. Imagine a lake. When the waters are stirred, you can't see what's underneath. But the moment the surface becomes still, the reflection becomes clear. The truth rises. It's the same with consciousness. Your frantic inner dialogue, your worry, your effort, it all stirs the surface. It blocks the signal. But when you become inwardly still, the image of your desire reflects back without resistance. That's when things begin to move. But they move toward you, not because you forced them, but because you've become magnetically aligned with them. This is not passivity. This is not laziness. This is mastery. Neville said, "You do not have to lift a finger to make it so." He meant it literally. The outer world reshapes itself around your inner conviction, not your outer actions. Now most people hear this and feel resistance. How can doing nothing lead to everything? Because doing nothing on the outside allows space for everything to rearrange itself in your favor. You stop interfering with the process. You stop telling life how and when it must arrive. You give up control, not as surrender, but as confidence. This is the transformative moment, the moment you recognize that life isn't responding to your hands, but to your state. You're not here to do your way into the desired life. You're here to assume your way into it. So pause, not as a tactic, but as a revelation. What if you stopped rehearsing conversations in your mind, stopped checking timelines, looking for signs, wondering if you're doing it right? What if you were willing to sit in the middle of the unknown with full confidence that it's already done? That moment, when effort dissolves and being takes its place, that's when manifestation becomes inevitable. So ask yourself now, where in your life are you still trying to make it happen? And what might happen if you simply let it? Let the waters go still. Let the reflection appear. Let it happen, and watch the world transform. Why chasing fails? There's something deeply paradoxical about desire. The moment you name it, want it, crave it, you feel the separation. You feel the gap between where you are and where you want to be. That very gap, if not understood properly, becomes the reason the desire remains distant. Neville Goddard was unflinching in his clarity. The only cause of failure is the failure to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But why is that so difficult? Why do we fall back into longing, searching, reaching? Because we've been conditioned to chase. The world teaches us that if you want something, you must run after it. If you want success, you hustle. If you want love, you pursue. If you want healing, you search endlessly for a cure. But what does this posture say to the subconscious mind? It says, I don't have it. It says, it's far from me. And the subconscious, which only accepts what it hears and feels without question, reflects that exact message back. You become locked in the identity of the seeker, never the one who is found. The more you seek, the more you confirm your distance. And so manifestation becomes a frustrating loop. You visualize, you affirm, you watch the clock, you look for signs. But all of it comes from the subtle belief. It's not here yet. And because your dominant feeling is not yet, life continues to mirror that state. Chasing is rooted in lack. It assumes that what you desire exists outside of you. And worse, that it exists in someone else's hands, in some future timeline, in some set of favorable circumstances you must strive to unlock. But Neville turns that entire idea inside out. He teaches that the desire itself is proof of its fulfillment, that the moment you desire something, you've already touched the reality in which it is true. Your job is not to chase it down, it's to accept it as done. Let's pause here and reflect with honesty. Where in your life are you still chasing? Is it the desire for recognition, for love, for safety or freedom? Are you still believing that it will come once something external changes? That belief alone is the barrier, not the world, not the people, not the timing, just the state you're in. Neville shared countless examples of people who dropped the chase and entered into the assumption. And suddenly, what they longed for came to them without effort. One woman imagined walking into a friend's home and being congratulated on her engagement. She didn't beg, push, or demand. She felt it real. She dropped the search. Within weeks, the man she had loved for years proposed. Why? Because she left the identity of the chaser and entered the state of the one who had already received. This is not superstition, it's spiritual law. When you chase, you repel. When you assume, you attract. When you stop looking for it, you realize you already are it. And once that realization is felt, not just thought but deeply felt, your outer world has no choice. It must conform to your inner conviction. So the next time you feel the urge to chase, pause. Recognize that urge as the sign you've forgotten your power. And instead of reaching outward, go inward. Step into the state. Stand in the end. And let the world chase you. Why emptiness attracts fulfillment? There is a sacred intelligence in the spaces we rush to fill. Most people feel discomfort when nothing seems to be happening. When the desire has been imagined but hasn't yet taken shape in the world, they panic. They call it a delay. They question the process. They search for new methods, new mentors, new ways to force movement. But the truth is, they're standing in the middle of a powerful space and misunderstanding its purpose. Neville Goddard called this space the silence, the stillness, the interval between imaginal act and physical manifestation. And he taught something most people overlook, that this emptiness is not the absence of fulfillment. It is the atmosphere in which fulfillment is conceived. Emptiness is not a lack. It is a vacuum, and a vacuum always draws something into it. Imagine a room with a missing piece of furniture. The moment you remove something from the space, you begin to imagine what could go there. Your mind fills in the blank automatically. But in the inner world, this blank is an invitation. It is a signal to life that there is space for the thing to arrive. In manifestation, this emptiness often shows up as a pause, a silence after the assumption, a gap between the imaginal act and the outer result. And in this gap, you are not meant to panic. You are meant to rest in your knowing. The most potent creations happen in stillness, not because nothing is occurring, but because everything is. Neville often said, creation is finished, that what you desire already exists, and the role of imagination is not to create it, but to select it, to bring it forward into view by assuming the feeling of its presence. So what role does emptiness play? It is the hidden hallway between selection and appearance. It is the space in which the bridge of incidents is quietly being assembled. And when you interfere with that space, when you try to fill it with worry, action, or doubt, you disrupt the process. Consider this. When an artist begins a painting, they do not fear the blank canvas. They understand it is the necessary beginning. The emptiness is not an obstacle. It is the medium. Without the blankness, nothing new can form. So too with you. If your desire feels not here yet, it is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that you have entered the sacred void, the moment just before form. And the only thing required of you in that space is trust. Here's what happens when you stop trying to fill the emptiness with effort. You stop resisting. You stop signaling lack. You begin to feel, not the absence of your desire, but its echo, its vibration, the outline of its presence before it fully materializes. And if you sit quietly in that space, you will begin to feel it real, not just in imagination, but in your body. Your nervous system will relax. Your assumptions will settle into place, and the world will begin to shape itself around what you have silently declared to be true. So ask yourself, what if this emptiness is not punishment but preparation? Can you hold it with reverence instead of fear? Can you trust the invisible before it becomes visible? Because those who do, those who understand that silence is not a void but a cradle, see results that appear almost miraculously. They didn't strive, they didn't hustle, they didn't lift a finger, they simply became available. And life responded to the invitation. If what you've heard so far has stirred something in you, a quiet recognition, a sense that reality might not be as fixed as it seems, then you'll want to check the pinned comment. Now, let's go deeper. Feeling is the secret. There is no technique more direct, more profound, or more transformative in Neville Goddard's teachings than the law of assumption. At its core, it is disarmingly simple. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not hope, not want, not beg, but assume. But what does that actually mean? To assume something is to take it as true without needing proof. You embody the end before it happens. You carry the inner conviction that your desire is already your reality, so deeply, so quietly, that it becomes more real to you than the world around you. Neville was clear. The world is a mirror, and it reflects not what you consciously wish for, but what you deeply feel to be true about yourself. This is why simply visualizing without feeling gets you nowhere. This is why affirmations spoken without belief fall flat. The outer world bends not to your words but to your state, and your state is determined by your assumption. Let's say you desire to be financially free. You can say it aloud every morning, you can repeat it as an affirmation, but if inwardly you still feel anxious when you open your bank app, or you still see yourself as someone who struggles, then that assumption is what's being expressed. You're not manifesting freedom. You're maintaining lack, cloaked in spiritual language. The truth is, you cannot lie to the subconscious. It always knows what you truly accept as real. To change your world, you must first change what you feel is true about yourself. Neville said, to be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. That means going deeper than surface thoughts. It means choosing a new self-concept, one aligned with your desire, and wearing it like a second skin. So how do you do that? Start with the end. Close the loop of desire by entering the state of fulfillment now. Don't wait for the event. Don't check for signs. Just be the one who already has it. 3 variations of this practice can help anchor the feeling. 1. Assume it upon waking. As soon as your eyes open, return to the state of the fulfilled wish. If you were already living it, how would your morning feel? What would be different? Not in your actions, but in your inner mood. 2. Carry it in your interactions. If you were already who you wish to be, how would you move? Speak, respond to challenges. You are not pretending. You are expressing from a new self-concept. 3. Feel it before sleep. The moments just before you drift into unconsciousness are potent. Neville called this the state akin to sleep. In this drowsy, impressionable state, assume the scene that would naturally follow your fulfilled desire. Not the event itself, but its consequence. Imagine what implies it is already done. For example, don't imagine the job interview. Imagine celebrating after receiving the offer. Don't imagine meeting your ideal partner. Imagine sitting together on a quiet morning years into a loving relationship. The subconscious accepts that which feels natural. The more you dwell in the end scene with emotional ease, the more natural it becomes, and what becomes natural within must express itself without. When you assume, you don't force anything. You simply occupy the state that matches your desire, and that state, held consistently and quietly, does all the work. You don't chase. You don't manipulate. You don't strive. You assume. You feel. You trust. And in that trust, life responds. Not because you earned it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. You are always assuming something. The question is, are you assuming lack or fulfillment? Choose the state. Live from the end. and let that inner knowing become the new center of gravity around which your entire world rearranges itself. Do nothing equals do everything. At first glance, it seems contradictory. How can doing nothing possibly mean doing everything? How can inaction bring about transformation? But this is not inaction in the ordinary sense. It is the sacred pause between desire and manifestation, a pause that most people rush to avoid. You've likely been taught to associate stillness with laziness. To be passive, you're told, is to be left behind. Society glorifies busyness, celebrates hustle, rewards urgency. But this constant activity comes at a cost. It drowns out the quiet voice of imagination. It keeps you externally focused and inwardly disconnected. Neville Goddard turned this narrative upside down. He taught that true manifestation begins when the inner world is reordered, and that reordering requires stillness. He said, "You do not have to persuade others. Your inner conviction will compel their action." So what does it mean to do nothing? It means to stop interfering with the natural unfolding of your assumption. It means to stop checking, measuring, doubting, and trying to hurry the process. It means no longer asking, "Where is it?" or "Why hasn't it shown up yet?" Those questions arise from disbelief, and disbelief is the only real barrier. Doing nothing is not about apathy. It is about not resisting, and resistance doesn't always look like fear or negativity. Sometimes resistance wears the mask of spiritual work. You visualize 5 times a day. You meditate with an agenda. You say affirmations, but you're secretly watching the clock. All of it is rooted in the subtle belief that you still lack something. But when you truly feel the wish fulfilled, when you live from the end, not toward it, but from it, there's nothing left to fix. No reason to chase. No need to prove. This is the moment when doing nothing becomes the most powerful thing you can do. It is the emotional stillness that says, "It's done." It is the internal rest that knows, "I no longer need to interfere." It is the creative surrender that trusts, "The unseen bridge is already building itself beneath my feet." Let's borrow a metaphor from nature. Consider a seed planted in fertile soil. Once planted, you do not dig it up every day to check if it has sprouted. You water it. You leave it. You trust that something invisible is at work. You don't force the bloom. You allow it. This is the way of the creative soul. You plant the assumption, you water it with feeling, and then you rest. You stop scrambling to control the how and the when. That's not your job. Your only task is to stay loyal to the state of the wish fulfilled. And yes, outer action may come, but it won't be frantic, it won't be desperate, it will feel effortless, like an inspired impulse. Not something you must do, but something you feel drawn to do, because it is flowing from the state you've already claimed. You see, you're not giving up. You're giving space. Space for movement. Space for alignment. Space for the unseen mechanisms of life to do what they do best. Bring form to your inner conviction. So when nothing appears to be happening, don't panic. That silence is not empty. It is full of unseen rearrangement. It is the pause between inhale and exhale. It is the stillness that precedes revelation. You don't need to push, you don't need to strive, you only need to let the assumption live within you, and then let it breathe. That is what it means to do nothing, and yet do everything. There is a profound difference between manifesting through effort and manifesting through alignment. The former is what most people attempt, pushing, repeating affirmations with clenched teeth, visualizing out of anxiety rather than confidence, watching the clock, scanning for signs. It's all done with the hope of changing the external world, but it comes from a place of inner resistance. Effortless manifestation, on the other hand, is not passive, but it is peaceful. It's not driven, but it is inevitable. It doesn't rush, but it always arrives. Why? Because it flows from a state that already contains the outcome. Neville Goddard made it unmistakably clear. The world is yourself pushed out. Whatever state you persist in inwardly will eventually crystallize into form. This is not a matter of willpower, but of identity. You are not trying to get something. You are returning to the awareness that you already are it. Effortless manifestation begins when the need to manifest disappears. This doesn't mean your desire fades away. It means the neediness fades. You stop trying to make it happen and start resting in the felt truth that it has already happened, in a dimension of consciousness more real than the one your 5 senses can currently perceive. And this is what most people miss. They confuse ease with apathy. They think letting go means giving up. But Neville never taught resignation. He taught realization. There is a vast difference between giving up on your desire and giving up your resistance to it. And in that moment, when resistance dissolves, you feel a quiet internal shift. This shift cannot be faked. You'll know it because you stop thinking about the desire as something outside of you. It stops feeling like a wish and starts feeling like a memory. You're no longer waiting for it, you're remembering it. This is the foundation of effortless manifestation. Let's go deeper. When you assume the state of the wish fulfilled, you are entering into psychological possession. You are not imagining towards something, you are imagining from it. You're no longer the one asking for change. You are the one through whom change is expressed. You think differently. You move differently. You carry a subtle tone in your being, one of completion, not seeking. And this tone is magnetic. When you're in that state, the need to perform techniques fades. You're not checking whether the desire is working. You don't need signs. You don't need outer proof. Why? Because you've already become the person for whom that reality is normal. Think about that word, normal. One of the most reliable signs that your manifestation is near is that the imagined state begins to feel normal. Not thrilling, not shocking, but deeply familiar. That's when you know your inner man has moved. Neville said, "The drama of life is a psychological one. You don't change the world by brute force or perfect conditions. You change it by altering your inner conversations, your inner self-talk, your inner assumptions. When those shift, your life has no choice. It must respond." Let's use a real-world example. Imagine someone who wants to manifest a new home. At first, they might daydream, look at houses online, create vision boards, but every night they go to sleep feeling that it's not quite real. There's hope, but also tension, desire, but also doubt. Now imagine that same person begins to shift. They stop browsing listings obsessively. They stop needing daily proof. Instead, they close their eyes each night and feel themselves in the new space. They imagine placing a cup on the kitchen counter. They hear the sound of the front door closing. They sit on the porch as if it were routine, and then they open their eyes, not to test whether it's working, but because they're already full. The desire has been accepted, emotionally, as real. They've stopped trying. And so the energy around the desire becomes neutral, stable, calm. And not long after, the right conversation unfolds. The perfect opportunity appears. The financial means align. Not because they hustled harder, but because they stepped into the state and let life rearrange itself around their conviction. This is the essence of effortless manifestation, and it's available to you, not once you prove yourself worthy, not after years of work, but now. The doorway is always the same, the state of being. So what does it take to get there? First, release urgency. Urgency is a symptom of disbelief. When you know something is yours, you don't rush it. You wait with assurance, not anxiety. Second, normalize the desire. Let it become familiar in your inner world. Don't hold it on a pedestal. Let it feel natural. If it feels too distant, bring it closer in your imagination. Let it become part of your identity. Third, trust in the bridge of incidents. You don't need to plan how it will unfold. That is not your domain. Your job is to occupy the state. The unfolding is inevitable once the assumption is stable. And finally, return to feeling. Whenever you feel doubt creeping in, don't argue with it. Don't overthink it. Just return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not the image, not the idea, the feeling. That subtle but powerful sense of, this is mine, this is done, this is who I am. Effortless manifestation doesn't mean you'll never act, but your action won't come from pressure. It will come from alignment. It will be action that flows from clarity, not lack. And often, it won't look like manifestation work at all. It will look like a conversation, a decision, a step taken without fanfare, because you're no longer trying to create your new life. You're already living from it. This is the shift. This is the ease. This is the power of assumption in full bloom. You don't need to force the flower to blossom. You only need to rest in the knowing that the seed has already been planted, and it cannot help but grow. When inner dialogue stops, reality moves. Most people believe that creating a new reality requires more thinking, more affirmations, more scripting, more mental effort. But Neville Goddard pointed to something far deeper, a state of creation that arises not from thought, but from stillness. He taught that when your inner dialogue ceases and you enter into quiet conviction, manifestation becomes effortless. This is the law of thoughtless creation. Neville emphasized that reality is shaped by your state of being, not by your words. You can say, I am wealthy 1,000 times, but if you still feel poor, If your body still tenses at the idea of spending money, then the state you occupy is not one of wealth, it's one of lack. Thought in this case becomes resistance disguised as effort. It's not that thinking is bad, it's that it can become a distraction from the deeper work, which is feeling. Not feeling in the emotional sense, but feeling in the spiritual sense. The deep inner conviction that something is already true. Neville said, "Your inner conviction will compel their action." He didn't say your repetition, your strategy, or your logic. He said conviction. Silent, calm, unwavering knowing. This is why states akin to sleep are so powerful. In those moments between waking and sleeping, your analytical mind dissolves. You stop narrating, you stop doubting, and you begin to feel without effort. You don't have to convince yourself, you simply know. In these brief, quiet moments, the imaginal act becomes saturated with belief, and that's all the subconscious needs. Saturation, not effort, not debate, just the stillness of a truth felt without resistance. Consider this: when something is truly yours, you don't talk about it constantly. You don't affirm your name every morning. You don't remind yourself that you have two hands. Why? Because those things are already assumed. They're part of your identity. That's the goal of all imaginal work, not to repeat an idea until it becomes real, but to feel it so deeply that it becomes natural. When it's natural, you no longer need to think about it. You simply live from it. This is creation at its most powerful, when you stop managing the process, when inner commentary fades, and when the desire becomes so real within that the outer world must echo it back. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. True manifestation begins the moment thought dissolves into silent knowing, when you no longer need to think it's true, because you already feel that it is. Let the assumed state live through you. You don't have to hold the state tightly. You don't have to repeat it constantly. Once you've assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled, your only task is to let it live through you, quietly, steadily, without effort. Neville said, "There is nothing to do but convince yourself of the truth of that which you desire to see manifested." But true conviction isn't loud. It's not desperate. It's a quiet shift in identity. You no longer speak about the desire. You speak from it. This is where manifestation becomes natural. You don't force results. You don't wait anxiously. You move through the world as the version of you who already has what they once wanted. And that changes everything. Your posture softens. Your expectations rise. You begin to notice how life organizes itself around your inner certainty. Let the assumed state shape your reactions, your choices, your tone. Let it become your baseline, not your ritual. And the world will follow, not because you made it happen, but because you accepted it as already done. This is the power of doing nothing and receiving everything, not by striving, but by being. Let the state become your habit. The assumed state is not a moment, it's a way of being. To let it live through you daily, begin and end each day in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not as a technique, but as a return to your true self. Notice your reactions. Are they coming from the version of you who has it or who still waits? Choose again. Let the state shape your tone, your thoughts, your movement through life. When it becomes familiar, reality has no choice but to reflect it. It's not effort, it's identity. Live from it until it feels natural. Now, if you feel called to deepen this work, to let these truths echo louder within, check the pinned comment. You'll find something there created just for you, a quiet companion to remind you daily of what's already yours.